by far the most common request I get in my email inbox is for me to recommend a decent, cheap action camera to people. Now, up till now I haven't had an answer for this, but now I have. I've managed to find a camera that cost about £60, which is approximately $90. This is it. But before we get into the review properly, let me show you a few clips that I recorded with this camera. Right, hopefully that's whetted your appetite. So let's look at the camera itself. Well, it bears a striking resemblance to the Liquid Image Ego, but it's quite a bit chunkier, as you can see from the side view here. And there's a reason for that. On the back of it, it's got an LCD screen, as well as a removable battery, which is something I know a lot of people are interested in. I'll just tip it out of the bottom here just to show you what it is. I don't know if you can get spares of these, but there it is. The battery life for me was about 2 hours 10 minutes when I was recording in 1080p mode with the LCD screen on, which isn't bad. Now, it clips with that little latch on the bottom there. More about that later on, but let's look at the sides of it. We've got a micro USB, a micro HDMI, and a couple of buttons on there. The HDMI, by the way, for the first person view flying people, you can't stream and do live video and record at the same time, just so you know. It doesn't do that. Anyway, there's the two buttons there. There's two buttons on the top. That's mode, OK, and a little LED light in the middle there that's blue. You got a power button, a menu button. That's where the SD card goes in there. There's a couple of little notches. You'll see those little ones at the bottom there. Those are for holding it to various little sort of holders. I'll show you those in a minute. And there's the screen, which is 1.5 inches. Quite a small screen, but it's useful to have a screen regardless. On the front, of course, you've got the microphone and speaker. Now, it comes in a package like this. It doesn't have a box, but this is a good idea. It cuts down on air freight, which means it's cheaper, of course. And it's quite well packaged in here as well. It's probably less likely to get damaged than in a box. All the individual things are in these little Ziploc type bags, which is a good idea. It stops everything sort of getting mixed up. So we'll get all these out and have a look at them, and then I'll just go through them one after the other to explain what you get with it. Now, nowhere does it mention the model number on the camera itself, but if you look in the manual here, you can see that it calls it the SJ1000. So it's the SJ1000. Some more specs in the manual here. You can see a few bits and pieces. It's got a 140-degree lens on it. It records in MOV file format H.264. Now, the video stats from the tests I've done, 1080p is at 15.25 megabits a second, 720p 60 is at 13.65. Now, this case is the important thing that comes with it. It's got a plastic screen on the front of that rather than a glass one. You've got buttons on the side here to press through to it. Of course, this makes it waterproof. It says up to 30 meters. I haven't tested it underwater. I'm not really interested in messing about in water. That's for other people to find out. But it's got this usual sort of latch mechanism on the side here. Open it up. You can see there's a rubber ring around the back there to keep the water out, supposedly. The camera pops inside here, and then of course the latch connects like that. It's nice to get this waterproof case with it, because with some cameras these are extras, and you can of course operate the buttons through the case there and get it recording and things like that. You see the blue light flashing on the top there. On the bottom of this case is a tripod hole, which of course is useful, but a little bit more about that later on as well. There's a bit of a caveat with that. On the back of it, there's this sort of clip type thing, which again holds it to various things, one of which is this. Notice it's got all sorts of slots and things in it, presumably for putting belts through, and that slides into the back of the camera using those flexible legs there that push through and clip in place. And I suppose you could hold it like that. Now there's this as well. This is a suction cup thing. This is for holding it maybe in a car. Again, notice it's got that tripod screw on the bottom there, which attaches to the bottom of that case there. The camera itself doesn't have a tripod screw, so you have to put it in that case if you want to hold it in that, and then you're supposed to tighten it up with that nut there, like that. Now it holds it upside down, this one of course, again more on that later. There's also this clip here which looks similar to the other one, but it doesn't have the clip on it. You have to sort of slide this one into this clip, and then it's got a ball joint on the top of that. There's all sorts of weird mounting options. I'm not sure what they were thinking with some of these, because I'm not quite convinced that they're all brilliant ideas. For example, that makes the camera very tall if you put it like that, but maybe you're supposed to put it at an angle like that. I'm not too sure. I mean, play around with these things, trying to get the best option for you. You might end up just using duct tape. There's two sticky back pads here which go on the bottom of those hexagonal items. This is a bicycle handlebar mount, of course, by the looks of it anyway. And again, I suppose you could put that clip into there and then hold the camera like that. But again, it's going to be pretty tall if you do that. But of course, as I mentioned, you can flip it over like that, might help. You've got a couple of straps here as well, one of which has a adjuster on it. You've got a car power adapter with that micro USB plug on the end there. You've got a USB charger for plugging in your mains as long as you're in the right country. A lens cleaning cloth, a sort of bag of bits, which I presume hold everything together. I didn't really go into that. Then these clips are for using the camera without the waterproof case on. So this one clips into those little notches I mentioned earlier on in the outside of the camera and holds it like that. And I suppose you could put that through a belt or tighten it through a tripod screw hole or something like that. It's quite a useful one. Put a sticky back pad on the back of it. One of those Tetris shaped pieces could go on there. Also, it does fold down like this, as you can see, which means you could stand it up like that or put the sticky back pad on the bottom of it as well. So quite a few options with that one. This one, it's a clip which I suppose is designed to go onto clothing or something. You're probably better off putting it on a rucksack strap or something now, because the camera itself is pretty chunky. I mean, you couldn't put it on a shirt pocket, it would just sort of hang down. Also, that clip's a little bit loose on the back of that. I can imagine it just rotating very easily, so not the best one, that. By the way, the weight of the camera, let's just test that out, stick it on these scales here. We're looking at 103 grams. And if you're into ounces, that's 3.63. Right, I think that's quite enough of that. So let's switch the camera on. I'll just show you the different modes, photo and video mode, and then I'll show you some decent test footage that I took with it. So you switch it on, it says welcome, comes on very quickly. You can see all the information on the screen here. It shows that you're in the video mode due to the camera at the top left there. You've got the cycle length, the microphone on or off, time and day, battery life, all that kind of stuff that you need to know. Very useful to have a screen on it. Press the M button to get into the different mode. You're now into the photo mode. Again, the screen information changes. But let's show some video that I took with it. Right, here we are. This is the first thing that I shot, and I went home and had a look at this. I was amazingly impressed with the clarity of it. Look at the buildings in the background. This is 1080p, nice and sharp. This is 720p, by the way. Didn't drop down too much, did it? You notice with a lot of cameras, 720p looks terrible. This one actually looks pretty decent. Now it's 720p 60. You've only got that one option, or 1080p 30. This is 1080p 30 again. Notice all the information here that you can see, all these signs and things. The detail that's in the picture is excellent. Let's zoom in. That's a crop of the image, which looks as good as some cameras when you don't crop them, doesn't it? I mean, you can almost read all that menu. So here I am. I found this guy stuck in a bubble trying to catch green bits of aero, which I believe would give him a parachute ride if he managed to get enough of them. Apparently that's what they were doing anyway. Interesting thing to shoot anyway. Look at the sky here. Look how bright blue it is. I mean, it might be a little bit ridiculous, but actually it was a lovely day this. But look at the wide angle though. 140 degrees gives you a really big fisheye lens. Some people might not like that. Let's look at a photo. That's a photo, and then this is a photo that I took with my iPhone on the same spot. Shows you the difference with the field of view. Let's try that again. This is a photo with the camera, then this is with the iPhone. So you can see the field of view is crazy on this one. The photos though are a bit soft. Let's look at this video and take a freeze frame of it, and now I'm going to show you a photo that I took on the same spot, and it kind of goes a bit softer. So the photos aren't that good with this camera. I mean, they're alright, but not as good as they could be. Now that latch I mentioned, you notice how it sticks out at the bottom there. If you try and put it on a flat surface, it holds the camera at a bit of an angle, which results in video that looks like this. I put the camera down on a wall to get this shot, so it's nice and steady, but as you can see, everything's a little bit diagonal. But it's very sharp, very clear. It's one of the clearest, sharpest cameras I've taken from edge to edge for the price. You can't really complain about it at all. Now let's go inside and have a look at those different resolutions. So this is 1080p. As you can see, nice and clear, very wide angle, you can see all the building there. But what I'm going to do now, I'll swap over into 720p mode and we'll just see the difference with that. So that's 720p there, a little bit softer, but not too bad. And also notice the field of view didn't change, which is different to a lot of cameras I've tested. Let's crop the 720p down, take a still out of it. So this is the middle section now, so just look at the shop signs and things. I'm going to flip over into 1080p and we'll see the difference. There you go, that's 1080p there, just slightly sharper. I mean, 1080p is nice and sharp, so it just shows you how good 720p is on this camera. And remember, 60 frames a second as well. So let's go back outside now, take a nice photo here. Notice my finger or thumb at the top left of the picture there. The angle's so wide, I'm always getting my fingers in shot with this camera. You've got to be careful. Now look at this here though. I'm crossing the road. Look how dark the people are on the other side. As I get nearer to them, the exposure will change and bring them all into the right brightness. So the camera does have a little bit of an issue with light and dark sometimes. Look at this picture now. Look at the wall on the left, and I'm going to put it into HDR mode to show you what that does. Look how it sort of brightens everything up there. That's HDR mode. It's an option in the camera. You can switch it on or off, and I found that leaving it on actually makes everything look a little bit better. So again, I'm indoors now. This is a dark place. HDR off. And by the way, I got thrown out of here. The guy said I couldn't film in here. I didn't realise you weren't allowed to, so I'm going to have to do it more secret next time. So that's HDR off, and that's HDR on. Just sort of brightens everything up a little bit. But look at that big fisheye lens. This camera isn't perfect for filming indoors and things because everything ends up with that fisheye effect. It's more designed for using as an action camera, of course, not a camera like this. Now what I'm going to do here, I'm going to show you the difference between light and dark, how the camera adjusts when you sort of tilt it from a bright area like it is outdoors now into this darker area here. It adjusts pretty quickly, but sometimes it just gets the exposure a little bit wrong. Let's listen to some sound quality from the camera now. Now that was taken without the protective waterproof plastic case on the camera, and the sound quality is very good. Now of course this footage on my motorcycle, I used the protective case so I could attach the camera to the bike using that tripod screw hole on the bottom. Now unfortunately it's a little bit vibrating, a little bit shaky, you'll hear some rattling, but I'll just stop speaking for a moment because it doesn't actually sound all that bad. You can hear the engine sound through that case. Now this looks really nice. Notice you can see the case on the right hand side and a little bit on the left, but also look at the left hand bottom. You can see my speedo going 55 there. I'm in 6th gear. Look how sharp that is to say it's right in the bottom left hand corner of the lens. That's brilliant. I mean, this looks really nice. This is what the camera is really designed for, using as an action camera, so you don't notice the fisheye lens as much when you're out and about in an area like this and you capture the whole image. It looks brilliant. Now, if you thought this camera provided excellent value for money as an action camera, it can also be used as a car camera. I'll demonstrate here. I've got this USB lead plugged into this USB power supply, plugged into the mains. I'm going to switch it on. So imagine this is your car engine switching on now, and the USB is plugged into your lighter socket. Notice it starts up, and if you look at the top left of the screen, you'll see the red dot flashing, which means it's started recording. And of course it does the usual things like looping the video around, cutting it into segments, deleting the oldest stuff, all that kind of stuff. Now, I'll switch off the power here, and you've got to imagine that's your car engine switching off now, and then the power supply getting cut to the lighter socket, in turn getting cut to the camera. And after a few seconds the camera will recognise that, and it'll shut down gracefully and turn off like that. Now here's some footage that was shot using the camera as a car camera. Notice the time and date stamp at the top left is upside down. Of course that's because the camera is being held upside down, and unfortunately there's no option in the menu to flip the date stamp. You can turn it off of course, but if you want it you're going to have it upside down. And also of course you've got to flip the video post-production, which I've done in my editing package It's a very simple process in most editing packages, but it's just something to mention. But look how clear this is. Again, lovely and sharp. You can see all the detail of these buildings on the right. Everything looks great. Notice the shadowy areas are a little bit dark, but I haven't adjusted the exposure any in the camera. I haven't altered any of those menus, and this was shot with the HDR off. Maybe if I put it on, it might have been a little bit brighter in some of the shadowy areas, but regardless, it looks brilliant, doesn't it? I mean, what a nice clear image for a camera that costs less than £60. Can't complain about this at all. Now, I know people are always interested to find out how these cameras work in low light at night time, so let's look at some footage that I shot. One of the problems with reviewing car cameras in the summer is that I've got to wait past 11 o'clock for it to get properly dark so we can do these nighttime tests. But of course it is now about 10 past 11, so it's plenty dark enough, so you should be able to see what kind of quality this camera is capable of in low light. Now you might notice that the camera's in a different position to where it was in the daytime shots. The camera was over on the left before and it was catching the edge of the windscreen. So I've put it in the centre of the windscreen, and when I finish this journey I'll park up and I'll show you exactly where I've put it and what mounting I used to hold it there. Here's the camera. It's mounted upside down again. The lens is at the bottom there. It's pointing out that way. It's on that hinged mount, and I've got the sticky back substance on the back here, and I've stuck it to this sort of central bit which holds my rear view mirror on. And as you can see here, I can fold it back up like that and it stays in place. Kind of hides out of the way a little bit, and I can fold it down while I'm driving. I can't actually really leave it in here. I'm kind of blagging you a little bit, because if I put the rear view mirror in place where it's supposed to be, doesn't actually fold back properly. It kind of gets stuck, but you kind of get the idea. You could potentially do this in your car. Unfortunately, if you just mount that sticky bit to the windscreen itself, the rake of my windscreen is not appropriate for the camera to point forwards. It kind of gets stuck at about that angle, so that's no use. So that's why I've mounted it on this central bit that kind of takes it away a little bit from the windscreen. Again, as always, you might find better mounting options in your car, or you might find worse ones. Of course, there's another option with this sticky back mount. You could get it and you could mount it the other way up on your dashboard somewhere, so the camera's pointing the right way up. Just something to think about. Right, now I've got to my least favourite and probably your favourite parts of every one of these videos. I'm going to show you how the camera operates, what all the menus do. So let's get into those menus. You press that button there and use those two to control it, and then the OK button on the top to select things. So let's press the menu button here to get into the menus. Now you press it once, you get into the options for the particular mode you're in. Press it twice, you get into the setup mode. We're in the video camera mode here. So if we press it, we get into the video options. Press it again, setup, back to video camera mode. If we press the M button on the top to get into the other mode, we're in the photo mode, and then you get a different set of menus for the photo mode, but the same set of setup menus. This is getting rather confusing, isn't it? Right, we're in the camera mode. Let's just go down some of these options rather quickly. We'll just flip down them here to show you what options you've got available. To be honest, I don't really adjust many of these things. It does have anti-shaking, but only for photos, for stills, which is probably a good thing, because I'd had that anti-shake in another camera the other week. That was terrible, digital stabilization. You can take time shots in this camera. You can adjust the resolution. Some of these are a bit ridiculous. I'm sure it's not really 12 megapixels. The sequence takes 3 shots together like this. So you can relive your Duran Duran Girls on Film moments. If you go into the setup menus here, which are the general ones, you've got how long it takes for the camera to power off, 3, 5, 10 minutes, beep on and off. Here are the languages. Let's just go through those so that you can have a look at them. We'll just flip all the way down. That's it. Right. Gravity sensing, G sensor. That's for using it in the car. I don't usually have those on. You can have the screen save, which is supposed to blank the screen after those amounts of minutes. Again, I'll show you something about that later on. Frequency, formatting the card. Here's the version of mine. That's just so you know, in case you get a different one. Now, in the video menus, let's just have a look at these. The resolution options are as follows: 1080p 30, 720p 60, and then a couple of others that I'm not going to be using. Cyclic recording, how long it records the segments, 3, 5, 10 minutes, or off. I imagine off will record up to the 4 GB limit of FAT probably. HDR on and off, I mentioned earlier on, it's probably best to leave that on. You can adjust the exposure manually if you want. Motion detection on or off, I haven't tested that. sound recording on or off. You can also switch that off with a button if you want, and you can have the date stamp on or off as well. The camera's also got a digital zoom, but it's always worth avoiding those because they degrade the picture quality. Then there's a few options whilst you're recording. You can take a snapshot from the current video whilst it's recording the video. You can turn the mic on and off, or you can lock the current file if you want. Let's have a listen to the sound quality from that speaker. The only software glitch that I've noticed with the camera is in this menu here. If I set the screensaver, which is that one there, to go off at any interval, 1, 3 or 5 minutes, that's supposed to turn the screen off, make the screen blank, therefore give more battery life, or if you're using it in a car, not be distracting. Well, it doesn't work. Whatever you set in here, the screen remains on throughout the whole time that you're recording. Now, it's very handy but quite unusual to have an LCD screen on a small action camera like this. It enables you to change the settings and frame things properly when you're out and about. There's a few caveats though. It's a little bit difficult to see if the camera's at an angle. You have to hold the screen directly in front of your face to be able to see it properly if you're trying to frame things when you're out and about. Also, if the sun gets on the screen, it does have a tendency to bleach it out a bit and make it difficult to read what's going on, so you have to cup your hand over it. It's got a blue LED that flashes on the top here in that tiny hole, but the hole's a little bit small so that when you point it at any kind of an angle, you can't actually see if you're recording or not. You have to cup your hand over it again. It's got a red dot flashing on the screen at the top left, but again, can be quite difficult to see in the sunlight. So given the price, there's very little to complain about with this camera, as far as the video quality and sound quality goes as well. The one thing I do have a bit of an issue with though is the mounting options. They're not the best. I mean, I can't really complain too much for the price I paid, about £50 to £60, but still, they do make the camera rather hard to mount to things. The first one is this case here. The screw thread in the bottom there, the tripod screw thread, it's rather shallow. You can see it's sort of got plastic stuff bunged in it. Only got a couple of little screws there. So whenever you screw anything into that, it doesn't go in it very far at all. I'll just show you with this. You can see how far it's sticking out there. That's sort of maximum. So I can't really use it with other tripod screw mounts. I was trying that on my motorbike, which is why all the footage from the motorbike journey is rather vibrating, because I was using it with a mount that was fine on other things, but on this unfortunately it wasn't holding it too firmly. Now, that's only a minor thing. The case itself feels a bit plasticky, but of course it is plastic, what do you expect? But I can imagine this may be breaking if you drop it, and I don't know how you get a spare one of these, so be careful with it. Now, of course, the lens cover there, that's plastic as far as I can tell anyway, rather than glass that you get on some of the more expensive cases, but it doesn't affect the video quality in any negative way, so it's nothing to worry about. Getting in the case is a bit tricky. This sort of bracket here, you can see that the buttons there kind of in the way of where I'd want to put my finger under it, so it's hard to get into that at all. You have to sort of pull it with two hands like this. Bit tricky that. But the main issue that I've got with this case is it doesn't have a button to get to the power. I'll just close that up so we can see it again. You see, I've got buttons for the two at the top here, these two down here, those all work fine. One over here, but it's above the, if you can see it, menu switch there. The power switch is up there. There's no way to turn it on unless you get it out of the case first, which is a bit annoying really, because every time you want to start a video, you have to go through this motion, power it up, hold on, wrong side, power it up, and then put it back in the case again, which is rather annoying. Of course, it will shut down automatically after a time if you have it set in the menus to power off when it's not in use. So you can start and stop your recording, as you can see here, but there's no way to power it up without taking it out of the case, and that's pretty annoying really. I don't know why they did that, I can't quite figure that out. The other thing is, these mounting options, they're all pretty poor really, none of them work particularly well. This one, for example, if I try and tighten that nut up as hard as I can so that this thing doesn't move around, right, that's as tight as I can get it, and it still moves. So I can't do any better than that. It's no good at all, and it's very plasticky. Got a feel I'm going to break it in a minute. Right, so if I do have it mounted in this and attach it up to my windscreen, it's all upside down. which there isn't an option in the menus to flip the video, unfortunately. So as you can see here, the on-screen displays are all upside down. And of course, when you put the video in your computer, it's upside down as well. Now, you can rotate it quite easily in most editing packages, but I'd like an option in the menus to be able to rotate the video. But that's really minor grumbles. Overall, I mean, I'm very, very happy with the camera. For the price that I paid, I can't argue at all with the video quality. It's just mainly the mounting options that let it down a little bit. But still, for the price, can't grumble. If there's one thing that I've learned from reviewing cameras from China, is that it won't be too long before clones start appearing of this model. Whenever anyone comes out with a new camera case like this, a new shell, then it won't be too long before somebody buys that shell from a wholesaler and starts putting their own internals in it, which may or may not be as good as the ones that I've got. Now, I bought the cheapest camera that I could find on eBay, so it's not about price, it's about getting lucky. Now, if you get in quickly and buy one now before the cloners turn up, you'll probably get one of these. There's links in the video description that will take you to people selling them at the moment. But the thing I'm happiest about is now whenever anyone asks me what small action camera would I recommend for people on a small budget, I'll say get yourself an SJ1000. Now if you want to get hold of one of these, there's links in the video description. There's also links there to downloadable samples from my blog, which will look better than the samples that I'm showing you on YouTube because they haven't been re-encoded. Anyway, for the moment, thanks for watching.